Original, yes, it still means you're really both. Because aboriginal means the first.
Okay. All right. Here's another. Did I miss the cell memory and how to activate the knowledge meditation? I don't think we did that. Um, let me see. Yeah, we'll be putting out the information for the Zoom meeting.
Yeah, we're going to have to, because the deal of it is, the dark priesthood is attacking truth like a wild wolf right now. As the world is reawakening, they are upping their game. Biological warfare, viral warfare, political warfare, psychological warfare, military warfare, economic warfare, sociological engineering warfare, which they've been doing all the time. It's just that they're not wasting time setting up smokescreen programs like they used to. They're just being blunt. And so this is, some people are uncomfortable with it, but it's not new. It's just that the priesthood's masks are off. Remember we were saying the last few years, all masks are off. And because the people could see it if they were willing, it's just that it's going to become more and more and more and more undeniable by them and also by you. So what you going to do? Because that's basically where we're at right now.
Yeah, let me see. Okay. Ready to test it. Word Sheila, Dr. G, I ask if crystals are good to have. They're very healing to me. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
It's just that you have to make sure you have the right crystal for you.
So now you're going back to the culture,
right?
to know.
You also need to know that you don't have crystals that counteract and conflict with each other. So crystals are good, which kind of, one of the things I have in mind for my little auction is a book about crystals. I mean, it's cards on crystals, but yes, crystals generally are good. You just need to make sure. And I don't know why I don't list and show people all the crystals that I have down here. All of those are crystals, and
oh yeah,
I need to make people,
a lot of stuff you had for years, and you just
those I have.
No, but none of the ones you talked about that you
got,
had. You told me about the ones you had under your bed for years.
Well, yeah, I didn't know what they were. Yeah. I had a big old conflict going on right there. I do sleep better now that the box of I had like I don't know 50 different crystals in a box that I had stuck under the bed.
Yeah, but you want to kind of separate them.
Yeah, so because all crystals are not created equal for whatever purposes you need. So make sure everybody has some sage though. Because now look, everybody should have sage or Palo Santo. Yeah, clearance. Anyway.
Well, again, isn't it back to the culture that already was?
Yeah.
But the deal of is having a comprehension of why your forefathers did certain things.
Yes.
Because they're harmonic with nature.
Absolutely.
And then you start recognizing that they were given negative connotations by the hybrids for you to abandon them. Then they gave you idol gods in place of it that's been destroying you. There you go.
Absolutely. What we did worked. What we had was what we needed. And we need to get back there. And that's the thing that's going to defeat the actions and the all of the operations that have been put in place against us.
Yeah, the exploiters.
That's how you can say
the vampires.
Remember the biblical thing: no weapon formed against you shall prosper. I mean, you got to have the right tools in order to defend yourself.
And it's always been around you. It's not like what do we do? I mean, how we continuously use our Bibles and our Qurans and Owaspis and Torahs, etc., to express the culture and then don't study the culture from what all these books come from. It's almost like they speak of it and then, it's sort of like you look the image and don't live the image. And because everybody's doing that, thinking that we're doing our deed type thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just like we, you know, like Dr. Naila, like you talk about, you know, like people keep talking about church. And if you ask the average person who's been going to churches most of their life what church is, they'll start telling you it's the building.
Yeah,
And don't know that it's an abstract of the great astrological or circle.
Well, the very thing that church denounces, you know,
is what church is. Is what church is.
That is funny.
You know, and so, and this is why, you know, and I think more now people can comprehend when we be saying or making a statement. Many people have gone to those buildings, but very few people have ever been to church.
Mm-hmm.
And yet the priests have known that, and it was the priests who have been doing that to them.
Now, I had a conversation with another sort of kind of former pastor who had listened to you talk about all pastors, all priests, all whatever know this, and he and I, this was just like yesterday, maybe, or the day before yesterday. It was in the last 2 days, and he was a little offended because he said he didn't know, and I said, "Don't be offended.
There's no need to be offended."
Well, I didn't know, because when we say we didn't know, you know, there are. I told him there you have to be pretty high up though. When you get into these mega things, mega congregations and so forth, there's no way you get there unless you definitely know. And then the others of us stumble like I did on the truth, or awakened by the truth,
and then turn a blind eye because they're vested, like you want to say.
Either you turn a blind eye or you do what I did do and you step out on the truth. You know, I turned my back on, you know, on fraud.
What you knew was what you learned was fraud.
I had to, but others won't do it. They'll know it. Those are the ones when you say when they find out.
Now, and I say this, and I say this. I say this. This is what I say. You know how, like, you know, when we're discussing some things that we're doing around, you know, physically, on a carpentry level and a construction level and a basic structural physics engineering level. And like, for instance, when you're sitting here and I was building them shelves, and the shelves being squared and level and plumb in their structure expose actually the warpage in the walls that otherwise you didn't notice.
No.
You know, but it's not something that we weren't, from an engineering perspective, actually dealing with from the time that we started doing work on this house, correcting, you know. But when you start seeing the, you know, the squares and the angles, you know, just like you can look up there, right? And a person who doesn't understand structure looks at it one way, but someone who understands structure already understand that he definitely doesn't have kiln dried lumber in there, and that they got rid of a lot of their trash, if you get the full point. Or you could tell that they were flipping. They weren't trying to really make something proper. And the reason I'm saying that is to say this. You know how, like, when it, like, being a barber, right? And my father was a barber. Over the years, when you're dealing with hair, you're dealing with bone structure. You actually deal with a study from a doctor's point of view, right? When you're studying cosmetology, and you know, the tests that you would take would be in a doctorate level for germicides, you know, fungus, hair texture, you know, looking at how hair grows from the crown, etc., different textures. And as you deal with these things over the years, by virtue of what you do, you learn also, not just from the established literary structured literary learning of both biological and structure, hair structure and follicles, etc. You learn from experience. And the reason I've always said that, you know how, like, so someone's working with carpentry for years and you work in different types of buildings, you begin to learn certain structures, even though technically when you're dealing with blueprint reading and carpentry principles and angles and cuts and complex angles, etc., and wood densities, based on hardwoods to softwoods, common woods, less common woods, rare woods, how they're used, what situations you would use them in, certain situations you would not use them in, thicknesses, widths of wood used in different structures for different purposes, whether in joists, as an example, or in rafters, etc. So by default, you learn certain things. So I've always said this, and what I recognize over the years, like say, if someone is over the years studying the Bible as an example, and they've literally made a business out of it, you know, and they've been collecting finance from people over the years, and they get degrees. And if you're studying, we're not talking about people who are playing these emotional games, pretending to be so-called erudite. But if you're studying, there's no way you can study the Bible and not learn Septuagintus. They're your first Bibles. You see what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. And this is why you see me will say when people, if someone's just talking casually on the corner or something like that, right? You can kind of give them a little leeway. But when someone puts up a sign and takes on a title of imam, pastor, rabbi, you know, bishop, reverend, those titles are PhDs. All those titles are adepts. And so if you say you're a carpenter and someone charges you with violating the use of a saw, then you say, well, some of us don't know what a saw is. If you said you're a carpenter, you can be held to having the responsibility to know what a saw and a hammer is. And so I say, anyone who studies religion and gets into it and makes it a business, and you've been in it for years, these things come across your path by default. Now, what you find is that when people start discovering these things, what they do is they start looking at the sociological positions that they're in, the vestments that they're in, the finance and the schoolings that they paid for, the buildings that they mortgaged, and etc. And they make decisions that if they tell the truth, the stuff collapses. And that's what I'm saying when I say that they know, because it's like you can't not know. You know, it's like you can't become a diver and a swimmer and never heard of H2O, never know what current is, don't know what tides are, as an example, if you get the point. Mm-hmm. Some of them don't know that water's wet. Well, I ain't playing that game no more. And I think because over the years we've been always making excuses for people is another reason why we're where we are right now. A robber don't know he robbing you, but he always happens to rob you, but he never gives it back. Well, he didn't know he was robbing me. Well, stop. You know, this is where I am with that. That's why I say that. Okay. Because by default you learn, if you get the point. If you're involved in it, by default you learn. And we need, if somebody say they're a surgeon and they've been cutting people's heads, hold them to their claim. They put a sign out there and they took a penny. If they took a penny, they're responsible. And it's called the rule of color. And the rule of color in law has always been this: no one who rules in government, no one who takes a position of authority or takes a position of trust can ever say they do not know the law, for it is their responsibility by organized principle to take an oath on the very principles of law that they are held in trust to do. Therefore, ignorance of the law is never excused, and particularly for anyone who takes a position of rulership. Therefore, the priesthood is not forgiven. They can forgive themselves, but the divine does not forgive.
Here's a question, kind of heavy, and I've gotten a lot of calls on this type of subject.
Oh, I can understand it.
Scoogie Doyle wants to know, what do you do if your spouse is ignorant, willingly so, but there's a child involved? Should one leave to pursue this calling to truth?
Keep this in mind. The willingness to leave should be converted into the willingness to teach. That's my answer.
Makes sense. You know, I tell people, because I get a lot of calls where they'll say, you know, my significant other, my maid or something, they totally aren't for it. Had a conversation today with someone who says they would never, they're probably on here, never marry because they can't find any. They wouldn't
well, I can understand that too.
Find someone who would understand, and this is, so important to them. But I always say, if you're in a relationship and your significant other and the family members and whatever aren't for it, that doesn't mean that you stop your pursuit of knowledge. If you came in here by yourself, you don't necessarily have to leave, but you need to be able to pursue your study, because there is somebody out there who's going to want to listen to you. It may not be in your household, but
isn't this interesting how what we're really discussing right now in this instance is the result of truth not being exposed. And it's a result of the contamination of humanity done by the priesthood by design. How we handle it is going to be determined by each of us in our own circumstance. You also may have to look at, and I don't promote it, but I comprehend what's going on. You know how, like the Septuagint say, if your right arm offend you, cut it off. But if you choose to do so, make sure that you do everything with moral, fair, and balanced determination. That there be no karmic response, in the sense that it is not predicated on any selfish or unfair motive. However, the other problem, because these are real problems that people are dealing with, because these what you call destructive platforms, even in social relationships, were by design. And again, if we're not willing to start telling the truth, this stuff is going to fall apart anyway. So my position is, look, you're in a battle that you're going to lose if you don't fix it. So if you're going to get robbed, put up a fight. That's my point. Because you're dealing with spiritual and physical robbery right now. And it's becoming open, meaning they're not even playing put the glove on anymore. They just walk you up, punch you right in the eye, and take your stuff, and then claim to be your government.
Now, I'm not sure.
And don't care whether you recognize it or not. Meanwhile, they're willing to kill you off and your children as you become less useful to them, which is really what they're doing. So now what you going to do?
I don't know whether I missed this question or if this is the question, because a person, this Knee Relief Chronicle, is saying, Dr. G, please answer question. Didn't say ask. Answer question about wooden energy totem and violent trauma spots of hybrids killing Moors like early 1900s Niagara Falls massacre. I don't know whether. I mean, I don't know whether there was a question asked earlier.
Because it's a structure. It's kind of, the way it's structured. You don't know what's a question.
I don't know whether they're saying I asked the question up here and you missed it.
Well, I
didn't see it, so you'd have to put it back.
From implications, from what I'm reading from implications, this is for people who may not get it. Many of the matriarchs, and we in general, in the land of Nod, and in the upper reaches of the atomic lakes, would meditate. Would use those areas for meditation. And so the Niagara Falls area, or coming off the lakes, etc., was where for thousands of years we had our meetings, confederations, and meditations, etc., on multiple levels. It's just simply a social part of our structure here, which is also why the hybrids focused on murdering or sacrificing a lot of the Moabitises there, killing off the matriarchy. And a lot of the hybrids would mock it by saying they would call Niagara Falls Nigger Falls, etc. You know, where they chop their heads off, steal their gold, their silver, stuff like that, and throw them over the falls. And as you know, with the rebellion that took place in that area, this is where the hybrids also corrupted the history of the massacre in that area, and that's where they started with some persons claiming to be Jews, but not Jews, who took over and converted the Niagara movement into what is known as the NAACP, and coloring our people and putting them under a color of law. And this is why you see persons who are part of that platform of thinking refer to our people as persons of color, part of the priesthood spell cast. So let's go into the law and see what they mean by people of color or colored people, colored persons. And this is back to maintenance of hell on earth. And this is where, you know, they keep doing this conversion or telling or saying things to mean something that they do not mean, and then